Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now I was contacted by the people at Ruspike asking if I would help them develop their product and provide them with a review. So first and foremost, before we get too far into this video, I'd like to say thank you to the representatives at Ruspike for providing this product for review today. Now what I have in my hands here is a zoomable tactical flashlight. I've carried this for a few weeks now, and I have to say overall, I'm actually pretty happy with it. I think it has reasonable features, has a pretty nice light output, is not terribly large for its overall capability, and I have to say, you know what, I'm actually pretty happy with this thing. I do have some pretty significant comments, they'll come later on, but let's go through the features real quick, and you can check this thing out. If you'd like to see more about this Ruspike tactical flashlight, stay tuned. The Ruspike Tactical Zoomable Flashlight comes in a case. It's a plastic molded case. It's not incredibly high quality, but it does the job. I could almost see using this maybe for dual purpose, but it's hard to say. Inside the case you'll see the contents nicely laid out. It does all fit inside. Now this kit is made up of the flashlight, as well as a bracket, a charger, battery, a AA adapter, and some diffusers. This Ruspike tactical flashlight is made of aircraft aluminum. Overall it has a nice weight, reasonable size, and is smooth to the touch. This LED flashlight utilizes the XM-L2 LED. The front of the flashlight has a reasonably large head. It does have a lens that allows this light to diffuse wide or tighten the beam down. In addition to the lens, it also does have a strike bezel. By pulling the head of the flashlight out, you do get an infinite adjustment zoom. Generally speaking, the beam goes from a nice wide beam to a tightened down beam that is pretty much in the shape of the LED or a square pattern. The tail cap of the flashlight has a tail switch. This tail switch turns the light on and off, as well as changing modes with a momentary press. In addition to the tail cap, there is also a lanyard on the back end of the flashlight. The tail cap is gasketed, but it does not come with any spare O-rings. I used the charger to charge the battery and it worked quite well. It has two colors, yellow or orange while it's charging, and green when it's done. One thing that I found a little bit funny about the 18650 that comes with the flashlight is that it's stamped right on it that you can't use the battery to its full capacity. There's also a letter that comes with the flashlight stating that they do not want you to draw it all the way down. I'm not sure how you're supposed to necessarily know that, so the only thing I can think is just charge it regularly. Here you see me installing the 18650 battery and going through the different modes. Turning the flashlight on, it definitely works. But here's something funny worth noting. When I unthread the tail cap, you'll notice that the battery is not a tight fit. It's actually floating around quite a bit on the inside. Now looking at this AA adapter, it fits much nicer. This poses a problem when you're carrying the flashlight because the 18650 has a tendency to rattle quite a bit. This to me is not in the spirit of a tactical flashlight if you're trying to remain silent. However, it did not seem to affect the overall function of the flashlight. Now a potential solution to this problem would be using an internal sleeve to help make up the difference in the size of the battery and the walls of the flashlight. Here you'll see that I've taken one of those sleeves from another flashlight that I have, and it seems to work quite well. Now getting into the different modes of the flashlight, you'll see I have the beam tightened down in the shape of a square. That is the fully zoomed out mode. Now the high mode is a 1200 lumen mode, middle is 700 lumens, low is 150 lumens, which is also the strobe brightness, and the SOS. Now widening out that beam, you'll see it does have a very nice soft overall glow. When I move in a little bit closer here and I scroll through the modes, you will see again that high, medium, and low mode then getting into the strobe and the SOS. There is no overall notable hotspot, just a nice, fine, even glow. I found that in use this was very helpful for walking around, and it did not necessarily hurt my overall night vision in general. It was reasonably soft and quite enjoyable. Now here you see the Ruspike tactical flashlight next to a ThruNite TN12. When looking at the beam patterns, the most notable difference is that the TN12 has an overall hotspot with also a spill flood on the side, when the Ruspike does not. There is no notable hotspot when the flashlight is in the fully zoomed out mode. Conversely, there is no spill when the flashlight is zoomed all the way in, and it is only hotspot in the shape of a square. Now it's a little bit hard to see here, but that tight beam is actually much brighter than the overall hotspot of the ThruNite. And even though I'm passing this beam over the hotspot of the ThruNite, you can't really see it, but I'm definitely able to see that beam all the way as it passes through the hotspot of the ThruNite. So there is a nice tight and refined spot on the Ruspike tactical flashlight. Now one of the add-on features to the Ruspike flashlight are these diffusers. You'll see that there are a couple of different styles. One of them's flat and one more like a cone. They both use the same adapter to connect to the flashlight, and overall I need to say they do a pretty nice job at diffusing the light. In this particular case, it's almost as if I'm simulating a power outage, and my ability to use this flashlight to provide overall light and quality viewing inside a room. I found this light to be bright enough to allow me to certainly perform tasks if I needed to, and what you're seeing in this case is on the high mode. Now swapping this diffuser over to the cone, just taking a look to see if it has overall different characteristics than the flat diffuser. Generally speaking, I find that both diffusers are pretty much about the same, maybe just a little bit more light being diffused with the cone diffuser versus the flat, but they both do pretty much just about the same job. Again, in this test you are seeing it on the high mode. Now one of the other features of the Ruspike kit is this articulating clamp. You have the ability to clamp the flashlight pretty much onto a number of different surfaces. Anything like a pole is definitely possible, or even a bottle or something like that. Here you see me connecting the flashlight to my gear organizer and trying to get it into place. Now one of the problems that I had is that out of the box, the actual arm was a little bit loose. I felt as though I was having a hard time getting this positioned the way I wanted to, and it just simply wanted to fall down. All things considered, pretty easy and reasonable fix. There are some screws on the inside that you can tighten down with a screwdriver. Working my way through the different connection points and figuring out exactly how tight I needed them, it wasn't really too big of a deal, and I did manage to get these things tightened to where I needed them. Here you can see the bracket is doing a much better job at holding the flashlight at a reasonable position. The only place that's not able to be tightened down or adjusted is where the swivel connection point is on the arm. You can see here that it is still a little loose and does not hold the flashlight exactly where I want it, but it still does a reasonable job. And looking a little closer at the details, you can see all the different joints and connection points inside that articulating arm, and then here also the Phillips head screws that you can tighten down if you need to. Overall, I found the clamp to be pretty effective. It had a nice firm grip, and you can see inside there is a little bit of padded foam so that you're not damaging what you're clipping it onto. I feel as though that foam also adds a nice level of grip and helps it to hold firmly into place. Alright, so now just to wrap things up on this Ruspike tactical flashlight. So my honest criticism, what do I think about this? Well, I have to admit, I really did enjoy my overall carrying experience. I think the functionality for the most part is pretty good. One thing that does bother me about the functionality is that as you're scrolling through the modes in the programming, as you're going from high to medium to low mode, and then it scrolls into those specialty modes such as the strobe and also the SOS. I typically don't like flashlights where those particular modes are in the programming in sequence with the high, medium, and low modes. So that kind of does bother me a little bit. I would prefer if there was another way of programming this so that you had to do maybe a double press to get into those specialty modes or something like that. The next thing is obviously the clicking battery. Now that is with the sleeve in, so it's not nearly as loud and obnoxious as it otherwise would have been. But if I take that sleeve out of here and just put the battery in all by itself, at this point you will definitely hear that this flashlight has a notable click. So I think that is a fundamental problem that absolutely has to be addressed in order for this to be even remotely discussed as a tactical flashlight. And even at that, I would not necessarily call this a tactical flashlight. It's not the most appropriate size for EDC, although I did carry this as an EDC and I thought it worked just fine. Now the other thing that I found is that this plastic molded case is kind of gimmicky. I mean, for me, I would really prefer to have actually a nicer case if they're going to provide it. And if not, why even bother? I mean, this to me just adds additional cost to something that it really doesn't need it. I mean, just put this stuff in a box and call it good, or provide a real nice case and make it a suitable feature so that this is actually a multi-purpose item. I mean, for me, I will probably never use this because it's cheap enough that, you know, the latches are okay but not great, and the sturdiness of the box is okay but not great, and then the padding is okay but not great, and when that all adds up to it, I realistically probably will never use this again. Now the other piece of this is that I actually overall like the idea of this lens feature. These diffusers worked quite well. I could see this flashlight being very useful in a power outage. I think that's a perfect place for this. And the other thing is, if maybe this flashlight had a magnetic tail cap, this would actually be a great feature for like automotive work or mechanics or something like that, where you need to kind of illuminate an area. So if this was not necessarily going to be a tactical flashlight, but rather sort of more of like a utility flashlight, I could see having a magnetic tail cap on here working very well. And then in terms of these diffusers, I mean, the plastic is a little bit cheap. You'll see just after a little bit of use here that this is already just a little bit loose. So I'm wondering that if you were going to use this flashlight in an outdoor application and be using it around and maybe knocking into something, if this would potentially just knock off and come off, at least with the cone. Now, I don't feel as though that's necessarily the same with the flat diffuser. I think it fits a little bit better and fits a little bit tighter, so the likeliness of that popping off is not very high. And then I actually don't mind the way this attaches to the flashlight. It does seem to work overall pretty well and maintains a reasonably good hold while it's on there. And now probably my biggest gripe about this, and I hope I'm speaking in place here, but I did some research and I found at least 4 other companies with literally the identical same flashlight. So this to me is a rebrand, and I don't know if it's the entire kit that's been assembled that makes this a Ruspike kit and flashlight versus, you know, all these other companies that don't seem to have the kit with it. So you'll see other companies such as Lighting Ever, Blue Fire, Wiziroon, and Aceti Light. Now these are all appearing at an initial glimpse to be literally the identical same flashlight, again just without the additional function and features that come in the kit. Now I wish a company would just be forthright and come forward and say, we have a flashlight that we're looking to market, we've rebranded it, but we've assembled it together into a kit to make it unique. And that to me would be a little more appropriate, but to approach somebody and make it sound like it's their own product that they've put together and to find out it's a rebrand really kind of makes me upset. Now for the most part, as I mentioned, I did like this flashlight. I feel like it performed pretty well, and I think for the money, I could probably recommend it. I don't typically like zoomable flashlights, but this worked well, and I did actually overall enjoy my experience. So again, thank you very much to the people at Ruspike for providing this product for a review. I hope my overall review was helpful and provided some good quality feedback. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you liked what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.